1 and 4 of your agenda. Does anybody have any questions, queries, etc.? No? May I have a proposer and a seconder then for the last set of minutes, please? Councillor Southcott, Councillor Kimber. Thank you very much indeed. All in favour? Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Declarations of interest is on there as item 3. Everybody knows the rules now. If anything comes up in the meeting, please alert the front desk straight away, please. Item 4, items requiring urgent attention. We have none. Item 5, public forum. Nothing's come in, has it? No, we didn't discuss that bit earlier. There's nothing there. Right, item 6, that was very swiftly got to. You're impressed, aren't you, Karen? Third sector partners. The West Devon CVS are here, having been deferred previously by us. So thank you, Karen, for accommodating us. This is Karen Nolan, who is the, I don't know, were you the chairman? Chief Officer, yes. You've had many titles over the years, Karen. So the Chief Officer for West Devon CVS. She has a presentation to give us, and then we'll be able to ask her some questions. But Karen does need to be out of this room by about 28 minutes past 2, so she can get to her 2:30 meeting. So off you go, Karen. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'm just going to run around here. Hopefully everybody can hear. Is that okay? Well, if people can hear here, that's fine. I have to say, it's more than 2 years since I've stood up in front of anybody and given a presentation, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm a little bit rusty. But as we said, I'm Karen Nolan. I'm actually Chief Officer, forgot to put it on the slide, for West Devon Community and Voluntary Services. And if I could have the next slide, please. I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about what we're for. We're basically here to support and champion community action across West Devon. We want to work with our voluntary sector, our not-for-profit and communities to help improve their well-being and their quality of life, and make sure that our communities are as resilient as they can be. Next slide, please. We've done quite a bit of work looking internally. COVID gave us an opportunity, it gave us challenges, but it gave us opportunities to reflect on kind of what we were for and where we should be going. And the trustees of West Devon CVS have considered what their sort of strategic objectives should be going forward. And it's basically as is here on the slides. When I was rehearsing this, I've just done an IT project. I'll just share this with you. And I was rehearsing with the online presenter. It kept saying, don't read what's on the slides and stop saying So hopefully, but it is about making sure that, as I've said, our voluntary and community sector, our not-for-profit sector, is thriving and sustainable. I think R was banned as well. I've said it, so I'm doing it. You can read the slide. It's about groups and it's about individuals. So we're trying to kind of look after both halves of our community. So if I could have the next slide, please. And internally, of course, we have to make sure that we're still here. We've been in existence now as West Devon CVS for nearly 14 years, I think. Before then, we were Okehampton CVS and Tavistock CVS, but came together to serve West Devon as a whole. I think one of the things that we could do better is to make people more aware of the services that we provide and the impact that we have on our communities. I like to think we're very good at just getting on with it. Not so good about telling people what we've done and the difference we've made. And we do need to get better at doing that so that everybody understands better the impact that we're having and the benefits that communities are getting from our services. Next slide. I thought it might be useful to reflect back on COVID and the initial response and the role that we played within it. We all know that West Devon individuals, people in our community stepped up to the plate and then some. We had a fantastic response. As CVS, we carried out in 2 months 39 DBS checks. That might not sound like a lot, but for us, that was a 400% increase in 2 months over our yearly figures. We got some funding in to do some work with existing groups. It was DCC infection control funding money, and it was funded through adult social care, and we worked with TAS at this end of the borough and Community Links up in Oakhampton to look at providing a standardised sort of menu of services for those who've either been told to isolate, stay at home, and needed things like shopping and prescriptions and befriending, those sort of services, alongside the local response groups that were doing such a phenomenal job in their own very local communities. We know of, as West Devon CBS, that there were more than 800 people who were participating in those local response groups. I'm not going to claim that's the figure. I suspect it's probably 20 to 25% higher. But those are the ones that we knew of through the work that we did looking at contacting and talking to our local response groups. We signposted volunteers to opportunities for those groups that were able to keep going during COVID, or who started up their services again during the lockdown or the other responses to the pandemic. For ourselves, we moved all our services, or as many as possible, to virtual. Steep learning curve for us, as well as many others, I know. And we did also participate in some wider initiatives, so with Team Devon in terms of the wider county response. So I personally sat on the Adult Social Care Emergency Response Cell every day for a month, and then every fortnight, just to help adult social care appreciate what the voluntary and community sector could do and how they could support their initiatives. I think it was a learning curve for them as well, actually, during that process. Next slide, please. So all in all, quite a lot went on during COVID. What we have done is talk to our sector and kind of discuss the challenges that they face, and as they are here. Everybody is experiencing continuing change. Everyone is experiencing increased demand for their services, whatever they are. Actually, it's across the piece. We had a lot of reports from voluntary and community groups about how their staff and volunteers were struggling almost to stay on top of the impact that COVID had on them as individuals and the people that they were supporting as individuals. It's quite tough. We've all experienced it, whether we're housing like Live West or social prescribers, or you as councillors, I'm sure, in your local communities have seen the impact that it had. On the back of that, whilst the demand was going up, especially once services restarted again, it was harder and harder to recruit volunteers to actually deliver the services that your group is trying to provide. Historically, I was looking back at some old presentations, and I think when David Cameron came into power and launched his big society, they did a big review, and I remember standing in front of one of these scrutiny committees, probably in about 2013 or 2015, and West Devon was the top borough nationally for the percentage of people that volunteered in its community. I dined out on that for about 5 years. I can't anymore, but we do still have really community-minded individuals in our borough. But we're still struggling to get, the groups are still struggling to get enough volunteers to deliver services to meet the demand. Funding and fundraising. I should say that the initial response from organisations like West Devon Borough Council, Devon County Council was really good in terms of the funding that was made available to groups. What we're getting reported now is that we really need long-term funding. We need funding to help us sustain, so 2 years, 3 years funding. There's quite a lot of short-term funding available to groups at the moment, but not so much, we'll fund you for 3 years. So very generous short-term funding from statutory bodies like the Borough Council. I put new crisis response. I could have put an S on the end of that. And of course, at the moment, we're dealing with Ukraine and the impact that may may have on our groups in terms of local services or activities for them to do locally. And digital inclusion came up as a challenge. Comparing West Devon to the rest of Devon, we're not reporting as much digital exclusion as some of the other areas, but we do know that digital exclusion still exists across West Devon, particularly in our more rural areas. And there are a number of projects that are going on at the moment at a county-wide level that we need to make sure that our communities in West Devon take advantage of. The other driver for this is, of course, more and more services going online. So we need to make sure that people can access them and know how to do that. Sorry, next slide, please. Well, that's a kind of bit about the issues. This is what a CVS does for those of you who don't know. This is a picture from the National Council for Voluntary Organisations about what you should expect from your infrastructure. We're about developing the sector, speaking and influencing on behalf of our sector and connecting our sector together. Next slide, please. If we take each of these in turn, these figures are from the last year, so up until March 2022. We provided one-to-one support for 75 groups. We held funds for 5 local groups. That includes some of the local response groups through the pandemic who didn't have a bank account. It also includes things like carers networks and those sort of groups that aren't fully constituted. We've run workshops virtually on mental health, as it says there, debt awareness and infection control. And 44 groups attended those virtual workshops. Not as many as we would expect to do in a normal year, but not bad. And we provided information. We're in touch with 483 groups. That's what we have as part of our intelligence. I've moved away from the microphone, so you might not be able to hear me. Part of our intelligence about which groups provide services to West Devon. They're not all based in West Devon, although a fairly high proportion are, about 400 are based in West Devon. And we have launched with our partners in Devon Voluntary Action a new community platform, which is the next slide, please, which looks like this and is a shared page together with South Hams and aims to be a one-stop shop where you can advertise volunteering opportunities, activities that are going on in your community, and can put up and communicate and have community conversations should you wish to do so. So we took the option to share a page with South Hams, but this is not a live link, but I will certainly put the link at the top. If you click on that link, you can drill down to your own individual areas underneath that. Next slide, please. So in terms of connecting people together, we have social prescribers, also known as wellbeing coordinators. They are aligned to both primary care networks that cover the borough, so that's West Devon Primary Care Network and North Dartmoor. The social prescribers supported well over 200 people last year. During the pandemic, they changed their services, so a lot of it was telephone support, but now they're back to face-to-face. We, obviously, I've mentioned the volunteering opportunities that people can log online and can see what's available in their areas. And we ran 3 wellbeing events. We didn't do these virtually, we did run them face-to-face. In Chagford, Lifton and Tavistock with the support of our county councillors, and the Tavistock one actually was held in Butchers Hall, and we had almost 500 people came to the doors on that day, so it was really successful event. Chagford and Lifton less so, but actually it also provided an opportunity for groups to come together and talk to themselves. So every bit of knowledge gained is knowledge that can be used. And we encouraged collaboration through what I like to think of as our highly successful health and wellbeing alliances in Oakhampton and Tavistock. They carried on through the pandemic. We switched to virtual and now back to face-to-face. They are a really vibrant, actually, I think, group of organisations, both voluntary sector and statutory organisations, that come together about once a quarter and discuss how individually or collectively they can meet the health and wellbeing needs of their communities. And I put warmer, healthier homes there, and I'd like to thank the Borough Council for supporting this project, who did provide a letter of support. This is a 2-year project. We've just gone into our 2nd year, which started in April 2021 in partnership with South Dartmoor Community Energy and Tamar Community Energy. So it's about making sure that homes are as healthy and warmer and healthy as possible for people's well-being. Sorry, I'm going to have to speed up a little bit, I think, if I could get any faster. Next slide, please. So in terms of influence, I've put a couple of things here where we did a piece of work that helped us, I like to think, helped us influence the sort of wider picture. One of these was around emergency food provision through the pandemic, which was done across South Hams and West Devon, but led by West Devon CBS. As part of a wider county project, which was funded by Devon Communities Foundation. What that's led to is additional community fridges going into the Oakhampton end of the borough, and an emerging food network of organisations who help support people, not just in emergency food banks, so not just food banks, but actually community fridges and other organisations. Yeah. So they've met, I think, a couple of times now, but that is something that we want to carry forward. I've mentioned, well, I haven't mentioned befriending and home support, but I have mentioned infection control. That enabled us to support both Tavistock Area Support Services and Community Links up in Oakhampton, both of which provide befriending services. We have also started some work with both the local response groups at each end of the borough in Abbey and Oakley, and we're looking to, I think Oakhampton are formalising their local response group, and for Tavistock there is an emerging group that will supplement the services that TAS are able to supply. So we should be getting even more access, because there's always a waiting list for befrienders. And the other point is about promoting the sector, representation. And I've listed here, we've done a lot of participation in the local care partnerships. And the challenge that we find here is that West Devon sits across 2 local care partnerships. So we're in the Eastern Local Care Partnership for Oakhampton as a very small part of the whole. And we're in the Western Local Care Partnership as Tavistock, which is a big part of the whole. So it's an ongoing challenge, but at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is make sure that people that live in those areas get the best services possible. It's taken up quite a bit of our time. Our role is to sit and speak on behalf of the sector. We don't represent them. We wouldn't claim to do that, but we do endeavour to make sure that our voluntary and community groups, the views of those groups are heard by those local care partnerships. It's easier in the Western Care Partnership than it is in the Eastern, where you're up against about 10 other towns. And the Community Mental Health Framework, which hopefully you are aware of, that's a new initiative. The agreement was awarded to a coalition. It's not the word I need to say. Consortium, thank you, for at county level, and we're just making sure that our local groups don't get cut out of the process as they seek to implement various activities, and promoting both the sector generally for West Devon and West Devon as a place, and ourselves, which, as I've said there, we know there's more work required there. Next slide, please. I just wanted to share sort of 4 bits of feedback that we've had. I'm going to take note of my online present queue, and I'm not going to read them to you, but they are, some of them amused me. So I'll let you look at those and move on, please. So our challenges, we're being continually asked to provide new responses I've mentioned demand growing up. We will be increasing our staff numbers over the next financial year. We have acquired some funding to provide I'm very pleased to say, a community builder to go into Tavistock, and or a hospital discharge coordinator to work alongside the social prescribers, both the Tavistock end. I've got long-term funding. I'm not trying to light my fire, I should say long-term funding. The consequence of the way in which our funding is coming down to us is that we get very little funding now, which allows us to work across the borough. We have to target our work depending on where the funding is coming from. So a lot of the funding that we are in receipt of comes from health and social care, or the joint funding, which I've referred to the local care partnerships. So some of it is at one end of the borough and some of it is at the other. So we strive to provide equivalent services at both ends of the borough. I can talk about the community builder for Tavistock and the hospital discharge coordinator for Tavistock because that funding has been confirmed. There is equal funding that's gone in for Oakhampton to do the same thing at that end, which is not yet confirmed. So at the end of the day, we're kind of continually battling to make sure that one end of everything is balanced across the borough, which is a challenge for us. We're beset by recruitment issues, the same as other organisations. So next slide, please. This is just what we're going to be up to next. We need more trustees. In fact, anyone here who fancies being a trustee of the CVS, please make yourself known to me. You'll be welcome with open arms. We're reviewing our 5-year plan. I mentioned our draft objectives earlier. We're recruiting, and we anticipate that we will go into more and more partnership working, particularly with Southham's CVS, because that's where our natural working boundaries are, really. And at the end of the day, though, everything we do is to make sure that communities in West Devon benefit. I want to finish by just saying thank you to our partners, yourselves, and these others that are here. And most importantly, at the bottom is our sector itself, because we wouldn't be anything in West Devon without those groups and organisations, small and big, local and not so local, that help us kind of support our communities in the best way possible. So thank you very much for inviting me today, and I hope that was a bit of a canter through what we do. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Councillor Sellis?
Yeah, many thanks, Karen. And for the record, I think we should note West Devon's appreciation for all that you do. And we do give you some funding. And I would just, for the record, please, say that this is value for money because you are efficient, effective and economical. So, thank you very much indeed. And you're talking there that you need some trustees. I was just wondering if there is any scope in having GPs or anybody from the clinical commissioning groups as trustees, because as we know with the Tavistock Health and Wellbeing Alliance, it took a little while to get them round the table, but clearly with social prescribing and issues such as that, they are key. So would there be any benefit?
Well, first of all, thank you, Devo, for those kind words, and also thank you to the council for the funding that you do give us. We do have an ex-GP as as our newest trustee, actually. So I think she provides, although she's retired, she does provide an interesting perspective on some of the health challenges that come through. So we would very much welcome more trustees from particularly the Tavistock end of the borough, because I think we're a little short on that, but on that side. But like I say, anybody who's keen to get involved, please make yourselves known.
Are there Any other questions, please? Councillor Crozier.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned warmer homes, and I know you've got an event happening in Beer Alston, which is in my ward, in 3 weeks. The big problem with warmer homes is actually getting the people in the lower grade homes actually to come forward. Is there any way that West Devon Council can give you some targets to go through? Because I guess they are the ones in the lowest rated communities, you know, the A, Bs and Cs, which are probably the ones who are least insulated.
Yeah, thank you. I think the project has got an emerging, it's called a village partnership for Beer Alston, and the delivery of the project is actually the Tamar Community Energy, and it is aimed at homes that are owned by private landlords. I believe that they have made contact with Livewell Southwest, Tamar Community Energy. I certainly think it would be, if they haven't already, would be a good idea for them to hook up with West Devon Borough Council and see if there are people that they could identify that might benefit. I think it's always a very delicate line to sort of tread between people who don't want to admit that they're in a certain circumstance and those that are happy to come forward. And that's why we will be running another wellbeing event in Beer Alston. I think it's May next month. Sure. Thank you. What do you know? And I think it's at those events which where you can kind of hide your real need amongst a more general need that people will come forward. So hopefully people will attend that and come forward there. But yeah, I'll certainly take that back. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Crozier. Karen, we just have one more question from Mr. Brock.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Karen.
Funding.
I was just listening to your concerns about funding and the need for security over the long term, common in the sector, and aware of the UK SPF funding that's been announced. One of the key strands for that is community in place, and it talks about skills, and we talked about digital in your presentation. So I just suppose it was just flagging it up. I'm quite sure it's high on your agenda to read through the prospectus, but perhaps it's something we can have a conversation about outside of the meeting. So shared prosperity funding, so UK SPF funding, announced April 13th, I think, this year.
Yes, thank you. Yes, certainly happy to have a conversation around that. I should say on digital particularly, there are a couple of projects, one called Velocity that we're involved in, which was about helping groups and organisations get more digitally literate, I suppose, for want of a better word. And if you struggled through the 6 weeks of courses to attend, you could access some funding. What I think is very interesting is that whilst groups started off very enthusiastic, it became a bit of a struggle to give up, you know, a morning every week for 6 weeks. And so I think I'm waiting for the figures to come through, but it'd be interesting to see how many of the groups made it through to to be able to access the funding for equipment or other things. And there is a digital inequalities project led by Devon Communities Together that is currently running, which is aimed at individuals who may want to have more upskilling, and I think they can access equipment as well, but that's a county project rather than a local project, so they'll be sent information that we didn't for a while. So but thank you.
Okay, Karen, thank you very much. I'm busy clock watching for you. Thank you for everything that the CVS does in West Devon. We're always very grateful, and it's lovely to see you and to be able to hear where West Devon CVS is and how they've come through the pandemic and going forward.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry that you benefited from my rather rusty presentation skills.
Oh, you're fine. You did well.
Thank you. I'm sorry I have to leave.
Thanks. Thank you. Hi, Karen. Take care.
Right. Has Alex gone to meet our guests?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
crossing.
So talk amongst yourselves, folks.
It's always dark when that screen's on. When we can put 50p in the meter when they're off, it's really good.
Sorry, Izzy, do you think they'll know about how to use the microphone? Or shall I just nip down and down?
Well, I've had my latest bill and it's gone down.
That's what.
Got a table on top floor. Table there? Yeah, get involved.
Where are we? Over there. Yes, you've got tables.
Oh, I see.
So it's just.
Okay.
You like some more water?
No, I'm absolutely fine, thank you.
Sure, because there's some bottles, the stuff by account for Redmond. Bottles of water up there. Are we?
Don't worry.
Thank you.
Right. I'm sorry, I'm going to throw you straight in. So hopefully you're, oh, there you go. Good afternoon. My name's Mandy Ewings and I'm the chairman of the Overview Scrutiny Committee for West Devon Borough Council. And I understand you're Paul Crawford, the chief exec, and Suzanne Brown. Right, okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Paul, would you like to begin then?
Well, yes, I would. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see you. And this has been an annual event, actually. So, what we thought we'd do is just give you a bit of background to the organisation and what we're doing. Now, I'm not going to critical on that, but it's someone who's in charge of the
Have you, right, could you, yes, the red
Sorry,
button, there we go. Everyone
there
can
we
hear
go.
you now.
Yeah, sorry, okay. If we could move on to the next slide, please, that would be wonderful. So what we wanted to do was give you a bit of background to Live West. Many of you will be familiar, but for those that aren't, a bit of background, a bit about our development activity, what we're doing across the southwest, but what we're doing specifically in West Devon. I'll hand over to Suzanne, who will talk about customer services, particularly through COVID, how we deliver services and what our priorities are. And our environmental agenda is such a big priority for us. We thought it'd be really helpful to give you an overview about what we're doing. And also what the priorities are around our homes in terms of making them net zero carbon. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. This is a chart showing the history of Live West. We started back in '74, and there's been, I'll let you read the slides as I'm talking, but a series of iterations, a series of mergers. I guess a couple of key milestones in 2006-07, Devon and Cornwall Housing merged with Penwith Housing in Cornwall, and in 2011 Tor Homes in South Hams merged with DCH, and then you can see that in 2015 Devon and Cornwall Housing merged with West Devon Homes, and then in 2018 DCH as was merged with Nightstone Housing, which was a large housing association in the west of England and North Somerset, to create the organisation we are today. For the last 4 years, we've spent most of our time bringing the two organisations together and creating one integrated Live West. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So these are our homes. I will turn around if you don't mind, because there's a lot of information. So on the right-hand side is all of our homes that we've developed in the last year by local authority area. We work in 20 local authorities. And on the right side, you can see what's under development. So if we look at West Devon, you can see 30 affordable homes were developed last year, and we have 91 committed currently in our pipeline. So that means sites that we own and are yet to develop, or schemes that are actually under construction as we speak today. If you look on the left-hand side, and some statistics about Live West, we built 800 affordable homes last year, and our current stock holding is about 38,500 homes. Nationally, there are about 1,300 housing associations. We're about the 21st largest. Last year we were the 16th largest developing association, but nationally the 8th largest provider of new social rent in the country. So that just gives you a flavour for the organisation, and I'm sure the slide deck will be available for you after the meeting if you want. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So this is just some company highlights. So we work entirely in the southwest. We have 38,500 homes in 20 local authorities. So we're either the largest or second largest landlord wherever we work. If you go to the next column, ultimately we're a landlord. We take customer service really importantly. We strive to get upper quartile satisfaction. Currently our satisfaction is 87% overall. Repairs is 81%, and the quality of our home, it's 90%. If you go to the next column, it's about growth. We have an ambition to build about 15,000 affordable homes over the next 10 years. We do activity for sale, so shared equity and open market sale, and we limit that activity to about 30% of our gross turnover. As I said a few minutes ago, we delivered 800 affordable homes last year. This year, we're planning to build closer to 1,050, and we'll just have to see how that goes. We've had, as I'm sure you appreciate, a range of challenges with COVID, work and material supply chain and so on, but we're fairly confident we'll hit over 1,000 homes this year. We have 1,400 colleagues. We believe we contribute to about 6,500 jobs across the southwest. We've got high employee satisfaction. It's something we really work hard to strive at. And then if you look at the right-hand side column, this gives you a sense of our financial strength. So today we have about £420 million of available funding to build new homes, and we have a further borrowing ability of in excess of £1 billion, largely through bonds, which we may want to touch on later. We've also successfully secured Homes England grant to 2026-7 of just over 123 million, and that will fund about 2,500 homes across our geography. And just finally on that slide, just to give you a sense of our financial surpluses, we were looking to make a net surplus last year of just over 51 million, and we've generated a net surplus of about 53 million. Just to be clear, we're a charitable organisation. That money doesn't leave the organisation. All of that money goes back in to build the affordable homes programme that we have planned. So if we could go to the next slide, we were asked to talk about what's our kind of vision and strategy. So you can see from this slide that we have effectively 4 parts of our vision: trusted by customers, homes that people want to live in, growing business, and proud to work here. And our corporate strategy and our vision is delivered by a range of sub-strategies. I'm not going to go through them, but you can see there's a list of strategies there, whether it's supported housing, asset management, EDI, environmental, they're all really aligned to ensure that we deliver our corporate strategy. So I think we'll canter through if we make to the next slide. And in terms of measuring success over the next 4 years, this just gives you a feel under each of those pillars around how we're hoping to achieve success. So 95% of our customers tell us they feel safe in their homes. We're currently at 92% actually, and all of our homes by 2028 to have an EPC energy rating of at least C or above. And at the moment we have about 26% of our homes that aren't actually there. 90% of our colleagues say that we value culture, diversity and inclusion, and 40% of our customers being able to access services digitally. And we have quite a significant investment programme to ensure that gives people the ability to do so. So if we can move on please to the next slide. I thought I'd just touch on our development activity. So if we could just go back.
Sorry,
there we go. Oh, okay. If we could just go to the next one, please. Don't worry, we'll canter through. So this slide, top half is showing you over the next 3 to 4 years, the affordable homes we are planning to build in West Devon. And you can see there's about 115 homes currently planned. So that's slightly larger than the number of 90 I showed you earlier on. These are sites that we don't necessarily, this includes sites we don't necessarily own, but have agreed terms on as well. And then the bottom half, you can see how many homes Live West is planning to build over the next 5 to 6 years. And you can see that's just over 7,000 homes of a range of tenures. So if I go to this part, you will see that we're planning to build just over 6,000 affordable homes. We deliver homes through two routes, through Section 106 planning and through land-led. One of the decisions we made about 4 or 5 years ago was if we want to be in greater control of the delivery of affordable homes, so we need to invest significantly in securing land rather than being reliant on developers to provide affordable homes. So you can see this year, for example, 31% of our homes will be delivered through land-led, increasing to about 50%. And our aim is to get there as soon as we possibly can. And we're hoping to achieve that in the next 2 years, which gives us a far greater level of confidence that the opportunities are in our control, and therefore we're in control of when they get delivered. But overall, just over 6,000 affordable homes. And then in terms of market rent and market sale, you'll see a further 1,000 homes planned to be delivered over that time period. And to be clear, we do market rent and market sale for one reason, well, A, to deliver homes, but principally to deliver a profit, which is then gifted back into the business, which acts as capital subsidy to build more desperately needed affordable homes. If we could go to the next slide, please. So I was asked if I could just give some thoughts around what are some of the challenges around supply. As West Devon, you've declared a housing crisis. Many local authorities across the Southwest have. But the challenges are around how do we increase the supply of affordable homes. And there are some challenges here which I've raised, which perhaps we could pick up later. But fundamentally, land supply is a huge challenge. Lead-in time for new projects. If we found a piece of land today, going through planning and procurement and completing homes, it could take 3 to 4 years. So this is not a quick fix. Resourcing, we know many local authorities are struggling from a resource perspective in terms of planners. There's also a limited number of commercial partners, and by that I mean developers, contractors. It's quite a challenging market at the moment, and many of you will be aware that one of the larger contractors, MySpace, went into receivership late last calendar year, and we expect more to go into receivership. So it's quite a challenging period to get contractors and developers to build. But also what we're increasingly seeing is local authorities are delivering below policy levels of affordable housing. Many are being challenged from a viability perspective. And we were talking earlier on with Alex, and really pleased to see that hasn't happened recently here. But nonetheless, it does happen. And the impact is that lots of local authorities aren't delivering policy level affordable housing. I think the final point on here is having a 5-year land supply is all well and good, but fundamentally, I think we'd all recognise that as a construct is probably not fit for purpose in what is a housing crisis. And so one of the things we are exploring with local authorities is how do we collaborate beyond 5 years to identify land which could potentially form new settlements in order to build the desperately needed affordable homes. And that may be something we might want to talk about in terms of how we collaborate. So if we could go to the next slide, which is disposals. Again, asked if we could just give a quick overview around disposals. I think it would be fair to say that with 38,000 homes, every home is assessed on a 5-yearly basis in terms of its investment needs. And we do have schemes that we identify that need appraisal from a regeneration perspective. For example, Pindercourt, which is in Tavistock. We generally don't dispose of homes which are tenanted. But when homes have been identified as needing significant investment, when they become empty, they do get prioritised for disposal. And to be clear, as and when we dispose of homes in the open market, we recycle the capital receipts to act as further subsidy to build more affordable homes. And really, as the age of properties and as investment needs change, and increasingly as we identify that there is huge investment to get homes to EPCC or net zero, I would suggest that we would continue to see more disposals taking place. But the challenge is actually making sure that through the planning system, we more than meet the supply, to replace those homes. And actually the capital received from those homes disposed of actually helps fund new affordable homes. The last two bullets just show you what was disposed of. So last year we sold 8 homes in West Devon, and we're currently planning to sell 6 existing homes within West Devon this financial year. So I'm going to hand over now to Suzanne. So,
hi, thank you for inviting me along today. So if we go to the next slide, and the next one I think it is. Okay, and next slide. And we're there. So what I was going to cover is just quickly run through some slides covering how we allocate our homes, set out our approach generally to service delivery. I thought it would be useful to pick up particularly some issues around affordability, particularly where we are at the moment, obviously just having had current rent increase, but also with increases around fuel poverty. Talk a little bit about customer engagement and how we're working in communities, and then round up with some information around our environmental strategy and our investment, as Paul's mentioned earlier, in our sort of our investment as we move towards net zero. So if you get to the next slide, just a bit of an update on allocations. So where we are on allocations, obviously you'll be aware that we are a member and allocate all of our homes through Devon Home Choice. We remain entirely committed to using choice-based lettings as an appropriate method of allocation. We recognise that there's obviously large demand in West Devon with over 1,000 applicants. We also offer house swaps through mutual exchanges, and in reality, with the huge amount of demand, waiting times varies based on location or need or the availability of homes. In the last 12 months, we've allocated 108 homes in West Devon area, and 30 of those homes were specifically allocated to homeless households. If we go to the next slide, please. Just talk a little bit about some of the challenges really and where we are in terms of post-pandemic in terms of service delivery. So we continue to maintain services throughout the pandemic. That included providing our full repairs service, albeit there were considerable sort of limitations to that, and that's resulted in substantial delays to repairs. So where we are at the moment is that we're adapting our services. We've now fully opened all of our services, and our offices are open to the public. All of our community facilities are open, and all of our staff are working back out in the community, visiting people's homes exactly as they were pre-pandemic. We have seen, I think it's worth mentioning because it's often an inquiry that comes through from councillors, an increase in antisocial behaviour, in some ways triggered during the pandemic, I think, and particularly I think in relation to the impacts that the pandemic had around mental health and sort of the responses to that, how people were living in very close proximity. So we've certainly seen an increase there. And we have struggled to get some engagement, we felt, from other statutory services, particularly community mental health teams, in providing that support. In terms of repairs, I mentioned some of the challenges around repairs. We have got a backlog in responsive repairs at the moment, which we're working through. We recognise it will probably take us into the latter part of the summer to be fully on top of that backlog. So that means that where customers would normally be waiting for a general repair about 4 weeks, they're waiting 6 to 7 weeks for that repair as a result of that backlog at the current time. Again, our planned works delivery, whilst we delivered probably about 50% of our planned works programme last year across most aspects, across most components, that will escalate this year as we catch up on that planned works programme. So that's the installation of new kitchens, new bathrooms, roof replacement, window replacement works. We move on to the next slide, please. So just wanted to talk a little bit about affordability, because I think that's something that is certainly impacting on all of our customers at the moment, and is probably something that you are hearing a lot about, particularly in relation to fuel costs, and talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing. We increased our rents at an increase of 4.1%. That was in line with the standard rent guidance. What we decided that we would do, though, is that we would do what we could to try and mitigate that, particularly for our customers, by putting in a very specific
strategy around providing financial support. So that's included £850,000 of specific financial support. That ranged from reducing some rent. So we took a decision to reduce rents where those had been previously converted to affordable rents as part of the 2012 affordable rents programme. So we made a decision to reduce those rents where they had low energy efficiency, and we identified that customers there might have high fuel bills. We specifically recruited an energy officer, and that's been really effective and really had really good positive take up actually from our customers, to the extent that we are looking to expand that service and take on more specialist staff in that area. And we have identified and allocated an additional support of £360,000 for a new tenant support fund. That's directly to support customers who pay their own rent. So that's not for customers who might be in receipt of housing benefit or housing related elements of universal credit. But this is specifically for customers who are paying their own rent but are struggling financially, and we're making that available. And we've added a further £100,000 to our Crisis and Hardship Fund. If we go to the next slide, please. This is a bit of a look at the funding we provided very specifically to customers in West Devon last year. So we provided customers in West Devon with total grants of close to £8,000. That was for a range of things, from food and utilities through to white goods, through to supporting new customers to take at the start of their tenancies, for example, with carpets or costs of curtains or things like that, so a whole range of things. In addition to crisis and hardship grants, we also provide tenancy sustainment support. So this is short-term support for up to 6 weeks, which is funded through Live West, where we actually help people on a one-to-one basis to signpost them and work with them to appropriate agencies to help them to maintain their tenancies. We go to the next slide, please. Chat a little bit about customer engagement. So we have a range of customer engagement mechanisms. Similar to yourself, we have a scrutiny panel. Our scrutiny panel of customers is called In Focus. There are 27 customers who are members of that scrutiny panel. Across our stock, we also have 144 estate champions, and our estate champions are out and about in our communities, and they're judging the quality of our services in those communities, particularly around cleaning and grounds maintenance, and feeding back to us on a monthly basis on what they think about those standards, so that we can make sure that actually we're addressing that quality out and about. 24 customers are on our communications group. And additionally, we've got almost now 600 customers who engage with us specifically through social media for a specific Facebook page we have called Facebook Your Views, where we'll do a lot of our online consultations. So we'll ask people to input on new policies, or we'll ask people to input on our strategies using that digital mechanism. Our customers are supported on a whole range of reviews over the last year, particularly in relation to complaints and service charges. And we also obviously want to externally review those services to make sure that we're meeting the needs of customers and good governance. So we asked TPAS to undertake a review of our current engagement. They described our engagement opportunities as very good, and our latest internal audit of customer engagement has identified substantial assurance from BDO. If we go to the next slide, please. The next slide is just picking up on some of the community work that we've undertaken. So this includes work at Turpin's Plot in Oakhampton, work at Torlands in Tavistock, and work at Greenlands, where we've carried out £200,000 worth of retrofit works to improve soundproofing. Our community work will be continuing this year,